Our guest speaker for today is in the person of James Darko Amponsah. James Darko Amponsah is a graduate of Linguistics from the University of Ghana, postgraduate in education from University of Cape Coast. He is a TEFL Certified educator from World TESOL Academy, UK, and TEFL Professional Development Institute, UK. He also has over 6 years of experience teaching English both in person and online. He is currently a tutor at Eagle Vision Language Institute, the Greater Accra Regional Coordinator, IELTA-Ghana, as well as the Learners Development Coordinator, IELTA-Ghana. Shall we welcome our guest speaker for today, Mr. James Darko? The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words. And I think since we are 11 minutes into one already, I wouldn't waste much time. To start with, I'll thank the leadership of IELTA-Ghana for giving me this opportunity to share and learn what I have with my colleague teachers. So I hope that through this particular webinar, I will learn much, or I will learn from other contributors as we discuss on this important topic, the relationship between grammar and speaking for a language learner. The first question I want us to think about is, the topic assumes that there is a relationship. So my question is, what has grammar got to do with speaking? In a few minutes, please, you can share your opinion in the chat box, because I believe in this particular webinar, I'm not assuming a position of an epitome of knowledge. No, as English teachers, I'm sure we have a number of experience and knowledge. So I'm only here to facilitate this particular discussion so we can learn and share ideas and grow together. So my first question is, what has grammar got to do with speaking? Do they have any relationship at all? You can share your opinion, or you can comment on this, probably in the chat box, if you have any. Okay. Sorry, Madam Moderator. Okay, so I think I can see some submissions already. So grammar helps to construct meaningful sentences with speaking. It helps clear ambiguity. If you want to speak a language correctly, you need to know its grammar rules. Okay, there's a number of them, which means there is a good relationship between grammar and speaking. And that's awesome. So yes, knowing this, I know we are on the same level, so we are not trying to join something which has no correlation, but we are just trying to assess the relationship that exists between two different concepts or two entities. Before I move on, I would like to share a few facts about languages, which I got, and I think it will be worthwhile to play with. The first one is, it's interesting that English did not originate from the England. Even though English is the official language of UK, it actually emerged from Germany, Western Germany. So a history of English tells us that the Angles and the Saxons actually took English to the England and dominated there with their language. And over time, the language evolved and we have the English we have now. Also, 80% of all devices that we use digitally stores information. And this information, 80% of them are in English, despite the numerous languages we have globally, which shows that English is not just another language, but one of the important languages now. Also, as interesting as it will be, Nigeria has more English speakers than the UK. So record shows that Nigeria has over 90 million users of the language, while the UK has 60 million. And not only Nigeria, Pakistan, the Philippines, the United States, as well as India, they all have more speakers of English than the UK themselves. Also, the word alphabet that we have in English language originated from Greek, and from the first two letters of Greek, that's alpha and beta. So blending these two, alpha and beta, we got alphabet coined. And the next interesting fact I want to share is that we have 7,151 languages globally. And out of these, Khmer, which is the language spoken in Cambodia, has the largest or the longest alphabets. They have 74 letters in their alphabets, with Papua New Guinea also having the smallest. And moving on, Chinese, Mandarin Chinese is the widely spoken language globally. And second to it is the English language. So next is that the United States of America, despite it being known for English language, does not recognize English as its official language. So the United States has over 80 languages spoken there. Out of these languages, English is one of them. However, English is seen as the most widely spoken language in the United States. About 78% of the population speak English. And hence, it is considered as the normal language they use, but not officially accepted as the official language of the country. And the last interesting fact I want to share is that, as I mentioned earlier, we have over 7,151 languages globally. However, the world's population speak only 23 of them, or half of the world's population speak only 23 of these. The rest are spoken by a few natives of those languages. So these are some of the key words, key facts I thought it would be helpful to share. Then moving on, for every language, there are components of that particular language, of which English language is no exception. So the English language has the speaking, listening, reading, and writing, just as any other language. And speaking, as one of our key words in this topic, forms part of the components of the English language. So let's look at the speaking itself. Speaking is a skill in English language. And specifically, it is considered to be a productive skill, together with writing, while listening and reading forms the receptive skill. So these receptive skills and productive skills are used to show how the various skills work together. Whilst reading and listening helps you get an information, receive an information from a speaker, speaking and writing helps you produce your own information and communicate to a listener. So, as seen earlier, speaking is one of the skills and components of the language. But what is speaking? There are different ways of communicating. We can communicate through various means, but whenever communication happens through the mouth, then we have speaking at play. So you can communicate through drums, through gestures, through signs, and through other medium. But when communication happens through your mouth, then we have speaking. And as we saw earlier, speaking is one of the productive skills, also called the active skills in the language. So looking closely at speaking, there are a number of components that also form speaking as a skill that help an individual acquire the skill of speaking. The first one I want to look at is vocabulary. When we look at vocabulary, vocabulary simply are words in the language that we use. So for you to have the ability to speak, you should have some words in the language. We have two forms of vocabulary, the active and the passive. The active are the ones you use more often in your expressions, daily communication, but the passive ones are the ones you only recognize. So when someone uses those languages, you understand them, but you don't use them actively in your speaking. The next aspect of the English of speaking that I want to use or focus on is pronunciation. Pronunciation simply looks at the way in which speaking of words is done, the way we speak words. So as we saw earlier, we have the actual words or terms, lexicons in a language, but the manner in which these lexicons are produced or given are what we call the pronunciation. In different languages, they have different components of pronunciation that they look at, but in English, we look at 4 main components. That's the sounds of the language, the stress pattern of the language, intonation pattern, as well as linking, also called connected speech. So if in pronunciation, that's what we actually look at. Fluency is one of the components that is mostly overlooked, but it simply shows the flow of words when you are communicating. How does your thoughts connect to each other easily and seamlessly? Once a speaker has this, then the speaker has demonstrated the fluency in a particular language they are using. These are but 3 of the components of speaking. And the next one is what we are comparing speaking with, which is grammar. Grammar is also a component of speaking. So as we shared earlier, there are similarities. But before that, I want us to look at something brief. Let's look at our grammar, please.
Which means a better outcome for everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my presentation on the Healthy Homes and Hospitals programme, or HHH. Any questions?
How'd you say your acronym again?
It's HHH.
Thought so.
Hey, how? You just shot Ian.
It's pronounced H, not H. Shoot him just for that. I just did. Anyway, it's my company. I can do what I like.
But we all signed the No Bullying in the Workplace pledge, which specifically bans physical violence.
What did you say?
Specifically bans physical violence.
It's specifically, with an S, specifically.
Bloody hell, Tony. Will you stop shooting people for saying things wrong?
You, what are you drinking?
Coffee.
What type?
It's an espresso.
The word is espresso. Stop it, Tony.
You know very well I've killed my own wife for ironically saying mispronunciation. If I apply rigorous standards at home, I see no reason why the same standards shouldn't apply in the workplace.
Why do you have to shoot them? Why can't you just sack them?
I never thought of that. Yes, I suppose I could. It's just the red mist tends to descend whenever I'm confronted with ignoramus.
Actually, Tony, I think you'll find it's ignoramuses.
What?
It's from the Latin, we are ignorant. That makes it a verb, not a noun. Blimey. At least that'll stop him shooting whoever he likes.
It's whomever.
Okay. So that was something interesting from the grammar, please, that I wanted to share so we can gradually move into our next and last component of the speaking aspect of a language, which is grammar. As we saw from the grammar, please, grammar simply forms the system and the structure of a language. So how a language is used is simply its grammar. And the English language, again, is of no exception. Again, we saw the importance of grammar a little bit from the video. But in addition to that, we all know the importance of grammar, some of which were shared in our session earlier. But I would like to touch on a few of them. Thus, with knowledge of grammar, clarity is established. Whenever you're speaking and you have a command over the grammar of the language you are using, you are quite clear, and it's easier for your listeners to follow whatever message you are putting across. Also, grammar helps a speaker to establish the patterns of a dialect or particular language. So through knowledge of grammar of English and through knowledge of grammar of French, you can establish some similarities or a pattern in these two languages. So grammar draws our attention to the patterns of languages. Also, grammar helps make texts clear. Whenever I write or I speak, for you to easily understand whatever is written or spoken, you need to have certain or some level of grammar or knowledge of grammar to be able to comprehend easily, clearly, and enjoy whatever you are communicating, you are reading or listening. So grammar helps with all these, with a number of them. In addition, as I said, these are but a few, but grammar is very important. And it's so important that is even why we are comparing the relationship, because sometimes there is a struggle between focusing on grammar or focusing on speaking. Despite grammar forming a part of speaking, its importance has given way for us to even put grammar apart with speaking, to ask the question, which of them must be focused on as a language learner? Should we focus so much on grammar, or we should focus on speaking? So it started a century-old question of whether we should look at fluency or we should look at accuracy. But I hope at the end of this lesson or this seminar, we should probably be able to be in a better position to help our learners with how to use grammar as a means of improving their speaking skills. So a few things I want to share. Despite the importance of grammar, it is established that there is a difference between the grammar we use whilst we write and the grammar we use whilst we speak. The grammar we use in our writing is the standard grammar, and the grammar we use while we speak is the spoken grammar. And these two, despite being a grammar of the same language, are not the same. They have some differences between them. So for spoken language, which we'll be focusing on for today, spoken grammar happens spontaneously and usually unplanned. You have an idea you want to communicate, but you use words in communicating the ideas you have. And that's spoken English or spoken grammar. And with the spoken grammar, the objective simply is with meaning and understanding. Once the speaker, whatever idea they have, and the listener comprehends what has been conveyed, spoken language has achieved its purpose. However, written grammar has a different objective. It doesn't only look at understanding a meaning, but also ensures that accuracy is established. So it's important that if we are looking at improving our speaking skills, we should not only focus on the written or the standard grammar, but the spoken grammar. So let's now look at some features of spoken grammar, since we've established that it's important for improving our speaking skill. The first one I want to touch on is called ellipsis. Ellipsis simply is taking away part of a text or a construction. So in writing, we can take some part of it. So for example, when you have a statement, the examples of maybe African countries include, then you bring your colon, then you can list the rest of them. The following, you have eliminated the listing that you'll be making using ellipsis, and it's in writing, it's usually signaled with 3 dots. But in speaking, ellipsis occurs differently, and we see it in this example. For example, do you have any questions? This is what will be written in standard grammar. However, in spoken grammar, it's accepted to say any questions, which is fine. And in this particular example, we are seeing situational ellipsis at play. Once we use any questions, subject and the verb in a sentence have been omitted. However, the meaning is still established. Those people who are listening have understanding of what is being spoken and the question that was asked. The reason we do this is just to make whatever we are communicating quite shorter and simpler for communication. That is one of the features of spoken grammar. The second I want to bring our attention to is head. We also call it the left dislocation. It's also a way of introducing a comment before we use that. So, example of this also forms, example of the head is this: yesterday's performance. It was impressive. Without yesterday's performance, you can go ahead and say it was impressive. By using yesterday's performance helps you to make whatever you are saying clear, and also use to buy time for yourself, as opposed to going straight to it was impressive or yesterday's performance was impressive. Once you say yesterday's performance, yeah, it was impressive. It gives you the time to speak, since spoken or speech is usually spontaneous and unplanned. Whenever you are speaking, you need to buy enough time for yourself. And therefore, dislocation or left dislocation is one of the means to achieve this particular purpose. The next I want to bring our attention to is right dislocation, which is also called tail. And at this point, I'm sure you have the idea or where this is going already. So whilst the left dislocation helps you to comment before you speak, right dislocation actually clarifies what you said. So it's a comment added to the end of a phrase. For example, my friend is humble, the one from Ghana. Yes. So I can easily say, my friend is humble, but adding the one from Ghana helps you clarify what kind of friend that I am really talking about. And this happens more often in spoken grammar, and we don't see that in standard grammar. And the purpose, again, is to add clarity to whatever we say. Another feature of spoken grammar that I want us to look at, or that we see at play anytime we speak, are fillers and back channels. We use this a lot, and even most communicators have commented that we should make it a conscious effort to eliminate these, as to they have the right intent of saying that, but this again is useful for a speaker because they help speakers buy time and encourage speakers to speak with confidence in a particular flow. So the first one is fillers. Example of fillers are, all these are comments that we pass whenever we speak, especially when we are trying to find a better way of putting a point across. We use fillers a lot, and they help us as speakers buy time for ourselves. The other end of fillers are back channels. So as a speaker speaks, an active listener must show signs that they are actively listening. And mostly back channels are what we use in showing and encouraging a speaker that they should continue with their speech and we are actively listening. So example of these are, oh yeah, okay, I see. Wow, These are comments that we pass, again, to give the speaker a motivation to keep speaking. The last that I want to share are phrasal chants. They are also phrases that combine with other elements and they are already made. So you don't construct them as and when you're speaking. But whenever you are speaking, you use the already constructed units called the phrasal chunks in your speech. The reason we use phrasal chunks are, one, to create vagueness. It's not always that whenever you are speaking, you want to be specific and precise as much as possible. Sometimes intentionally, you want to be vague and quite ambiguous just to help with in the context of whatever you're saying. So example of these are kind of, that's when you don't entirely agree or disagree to a particular assertion or belief or question. Sort of stuff like that, kind of. These are used to create vagueness whilst commenting on a particular thing. Another purpose for using phrasal chunks are to show politeness. For example, saying a bit, sometimes leaving some of these out makes a particular statement either rude or harsh, but adding a touch of these phrasal chunks helps you lessen the effects of a particular comment or statement you are passing, and hence you appear to be polite. The last importance of phrasal chunks I want to look at is to mark discourse structures. So whenever you're speaking, mostly, especially in American English, we hear this a lot. You know, I mean, but mind you, these are, again, phrases that have been constructed already, but they are brought in as and when we speak, just to show reiteration, a repetition, or to draw a listener's attention to a particular point, either aforementioned or yet to be mentioned. So these are but a few of the features of spoken grammar, which as learners of a language, we need to be aware of. And most importantly, as teachers of the language, we must know, have strong command over, so we can better help our listeners improve their speaking skill. So to look at it overall, the features of the spoken grammar are different from standard grammar in that spoken grammar is quite relaxed. Yes, there might be rules. Some people don't even agree or believe there are rules. They think there are usages, which because they are relaxed, the rules are relaxed in spoken grammar. Whilst in written grammar or standard grammar, run-on sentences are not allowed or considered to be inaccurate. In spoken grammar, run-on sentences are so much allowed. Same as fragments. So you will never encourage your learners or someone to use a fragment as a full sentence when they are writing. Rather, when you are speaking, we use fragments a lot, and it's so much accepted without any raising any eyebrow. And the last thing I want to mention is in standard grammar, grammarians has made us know that it's actually incorrect or inaccurate to end a sentence with a preposition. So whenever you want to end a sentence with a preposition, it's most likely you are using a phrasal verb. And because of that, you try and find a synonym of the phrasal verb or the meaning of the phrasal verb, as opposed to ending the sentence itself with the phrasal verb. But in spoken grammar, this again is so much accepted. However, I will be quick to add that we see almost all of these features sometimes when we write, especially on social media or the speech or scripts we write to be spoken. That is in drama or at the theater. Whenever we want to act out a particular concept, we use all the features of spoken grammar, even in written grammar, just to help put it across, because eventually to be spoken. Yes. So now my question, we've seen that there is a strong correlation between grammar and speaking. And we've seen that standard grammar is somewhat different from spoken grammar. But we do teach grammar daily in our various classrooms and to different people. So I know that you have a lot of experience and knowledge in terms of how you teach grammar. So my question is, how do you teach grammar? Can you share a few of the ways, maybe the strategies that you employ in teaching grammar to ensure that your learners have a strong command over grammar and not go without the importance they need to know about grammar? Maybe at this point you can unmute and share your comments, or you can also send in the chat box, but the floor is open. I want to know how we teach grammar in our various classrooms. So the floor is open. Hello.
Right. So we have been asked to talk about how we teach grammar. You can submit your points in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and then we will unmute you. Okay, so we have one in the chat box. Your name is not. It says we teach grammar based on the standard rules for grammar.
Okay. Okay, based on the standard rules of grammar. That's interesting. Please, any other?
Okay, this is coming from Mabel Salasti. It says, I teach grammar in context.
Okay, in context. Okay, that's interesting. So the context help you elicit the rules of the language you are teaching. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Please, any other?
Okay, Theophilus. It says, I emphasize the rules of the language.
Okay. Placing emphasis on the rules of the language.
And then from Frank, it says, I prefer to explain the rules governing the topic under study.
Okay. Explaining the rules that govern the language. Okay.
And that's coming from Yahuda. It says, I teach grammar using drills.
Okay. Interesting. Using drills.
Yes, and then from Miss Brenda. Miss Brenda is ambassador of IELTA in Mauritius. She says, according to the conversation topic you are teaching.
Oh, so you teach grammar based on a particular conversation. Okay. And the topic shows you the kind of rules you need to elicit to your learners. That's interesting. Thank you for sharing. Please, any other?
Okay, from Gideon, it says modeling the use of rules in spoken language.
Oh, that's interesting. The interesting word, modeling the use of rules in a spoken language. Okay. Okay, maybe you can add last one before we can move on.
Emmanuel, it says, I make my students listen to video conversation and I also explain the rules in context.
Wow, that's impressive. So listening to videos or watching videos, listening to audios and explaining them. These are amazing ways and strategies of helping our learners understand the structures of the English language as English teachers, which are so wonderful because they are needed to help our learners establish the rules or a strong command over standard grammar, which is mostly used in writing. I also have a few I want to add on to what you've shared already, and also draw attention to a few of the things based on our conversation so far. So the first one I want to look at is that spoken grammar is more modern, student-centered, and functional. And hence, whenever we teach grammar, we should not only focus on the written or the standard grammar, where we only elicit the rules. Rather, we should let students be at the center. So from some of our comments, we elicit that either through videos or audios, which are quite interesting. So that's one of the things I found which are so helpful, that because spoken grammar actually find its place in speech, that is demonstration and producing languages, it's helpful to teach it when you put the students in the same context for them to exhibit it. The next point I want to show about a way of teaching grammar, and if possible, spoken grammar, is to do it inductively. That is, instead of starting with the rules, then giving examples before allowing students to do that, maybe you having the rules in mind, you can give the examples first. And based on the examples, maybe you give 2 or 3 of the examples and allow your students to figure out the rules based on the examples you're giving. With that, understanding is easily established, and based on the understanding, they can easily use it in speaking, as opposed to giving the rules. Because if you first give the rules, the ability to speak is dependent on the understanding of the rules. If they don't understand the rules, practicing it might be difficult. Or the worst case scenario, they will memorize the rules and try and give you an answer whenever you ask a question, but they will never apply the same rule in their speech. So it's most helpful when you do it inductively by giving scenarios or giving examples and allow students to deduce the rules through these ones. Another interesting thing I found was using videos, which one of us shared, that using authentic videos, probably you can record a TV show program, a radio program, a movie, part of a movie, or anything you find to be real life context, you pick it authentically and you expose students to it. Then they get used to real-time conversation, because that's actually what they are going to do from after the classroom. So using authentic videos, audios, and radio extracts help you better introduce students to spoken language, as opposed to using textbooks. Then one more thing, you can create worksheets with activities for various features of the spoken languages. So we should not separate standard grammar from spoken grammar. As and when we go to class, in our textbooks, we have standard grammar. But if you want to help our students, we should every day at least find one of the rules, one of the features of spoken grammar, either ellipsis, phrasal chunks, heads or tails, fillers or back channels, any of these that we want to just take a worksheet based on them. And there are a number of them online. Then you take it to class. This worksheet will help the students to be able to identify the features of the spoken grammar so that they can easily translate the rules they've learned in standard English whenever they are speaking. Because sometimes if we leave it up to the students to do this translation from what they've learned in standard grammar, apply that in speaking, it becomes a little difficult and challenging. So using worksheets is quite helpful. Then we select short videos, podcasts, and dialogues. Again, this is in line with bringing audios and videos to class. These go a long way to help students know that whenever you find yourself in this particular situation, these are how you should apply what you've learned. And again, when you go to class, we can also intentionally limit the time we use in our explanation of the rules and give students more time to practice the rules in class even before they leave the classroom, because it helps them gather confidence and be comfortable with the rules they've acquired and practice them under your watch before they leave, so that you'll be confident they have a strong command over whatever you've taught and they will be applying it even without you. So these are but a few of the strategies that we can add to how we teach grammar. And I'm confident they will go a long way to help. So in wrapping up with the relationship between speaking and grammar, we've looked at a few things that language learners are pursuing a particular skill. Actually, according to research, about 80% of all learners of English language are learning it because they want to speak with it. Few of them are learning it either for writing or for academic purposes. But no matter the way you are using it, speaking comes first. And grammar can be used as a tool and not to focus so much on grammar study that you push speaking to the background. Also, we've seen that standard grammar, which is what we mostly see in textbooks, is quite different from spoken grammar, which we see in speeches. And spoken grammar, as we see in our everyday interaction and real-life conversation, is quite relaxed and informal because they come spontaneously and usually unplanned. And therefore, because we want to speak with our grammar, learning and practicing the spoken grammar can be tremendously helpful. So as teachers of the language, we should also be conscious of this so that we don't focus so much on, because obviously students will be examined based on the syllabus or a particular content in a textbook. However, we also don't want to disadvantage them, focusing so much on the standard grammar and leaving out the skill that they can acquire whenever they are alone. And lastly, looking at a few of the ways in which we can creatively teach grammar to help our learners. We can do that inductively, creatively, and use other resources apart from the textbooks that we use. And that's not to say ignore the textbooks, but you can glean the rules or the important concepts from the textbooks and add up to what you have in the textbooks with audios, podcasts, worksheets, and a number of things that can help and give students the confidence to be able to translate the rules they are learning into speaking whenever they are supposed to. So these are some of the things I gathered and I wanted to share. These are a few references, and thank you so much for your audience. I really appreciate it for our time together. Thank you. Madam Moderator.